Hey guys! Welcome to my channel. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening kung anong oras man kayo nanonood ngayon. Today we were going to talk about the case of Tagolino versus the House of Representatives Electoral Tribunal or HRET. What happens when a candidate is disqualified from running for office? So, his wife stepped in to take his place. Is that allowed? The answer is not as simple as it seems, and it became one of the most important rules on election substitution in the Philippines. This is the landmark case of Tagolino versus HRET, GR number 202202 on March 19, 2013. It was the run-up to the May 2010 elections. Richard Gomez filed his Certificate of Candidacy to run as representative of the 4th District of Leyte. In his documents, he declared that he was a resident of Ormoc City, meeting the constitutional requirement that a candidate must live in the area where he wants to represent for at least 1 year immediately before the election. This is a qualification required by the local government code. But the truth was, he actually resided in San Juan City, Metro Manila. An opposing candidate, Buenaventura Juntilla, questioned his eligibility. He filed a petition asking not just to disqualify Gomez, but also to cancel or deny due course to his certificate of candidacy for lying about his residency. On February 2010, the Comelec First Division granted the petition. The order read that Richard Gomez is disqualified, but here's the critical catch. The resolution did not explicitly say that his certificate of candidacy was cancelled. Gomez accepted the ruling. So what did he do thereafter? His wife, Lucy Torres Gomez, filed her own certificate of candidacy as his substitute. So, ang maaaring nangyari, maaaring sinabi ni Richard Gomez sa kanyang political party na since hindi naman ako makakatakbo dahil hindi ko na-meet yung 1-year requirement at nagdesisyon na yung COMELEC, yung asawa ko na lang yung isa-substitute ko para naman hindi sayang yung mga botante ko at yung mga taong sumusuporta sa akin. Disclaimer, so again, we're just assuming na kung yun nga ba yung sinabi ni Richard Gomez sa kanyang asawa. So that's why Lucy Torres Gomez substituted her husband to run for the 4th District Representative of Leyte. The Comelec and Bank approved this substitution, reasoning that Gomez was only stopped from running but he was still considered a valid candidate, so substitution was allowed. The election day came and that Richard Gomez's name remained on the ballot. He garnered more than 100,000 votes, way ahead of his rivals. Those votes were credited to Lucy, his wife, and she was proclaimed as the new congressman of Leyte 4th District representative. But the rival candidate, Silverio Tagolino, would not let this pass. He filed for a quo warranto before the HRET, arguing that Lucy was never a valid candidate because substitution was illegal. The HRET, however, ruled in favor of Lucy, dismissing the case and upholding her victory. So, Tagolino brought the matter all the way to the Supreme Court. The core question before the higher court was simple but critical. Was Lucy Gomez's substitution of her husband valid and legal? The Supreme Court ruled that hindi. HRET's decision was reversed and set aside. The substitution of Lucy Torres of her husband was declared invalid from the very start. To understand why the Supreme Court decided this way, let us break down the full ruling, which clarifies a legal distinction that changes everything. The court explained that under the Omnibus Election Code, there are two completely different ways to remove a candidate, and they have completely different effects on substitution. First one is the disqualification under the Omnibus Election Code Section 68. This applies when a candidate is disqualified because he committed election offenses, like buying votes, violating campaign rules, or he is a permanent resident of another country. Ang epekto nito, the candidate be still a valid and legitimate from the start, pero he will be stopped, no, from continuing his candidacy as a penalty for his for the election-related offense, ha. Ito ay hindi penal law offense, but election-related offense. And because he was a valid candidate, he can be substituted by someone from his political party. Second would be the denial of due course or cancellation of the Certificate of Candidacy under Section 78. This applies when a candidate lied or made a material misrepresentation about his essential qualification, things like age, citizenship, or residency. Itong mga material misrepresentation na to is importante because ito yung papatunay na eligible ka ba talaga for public office. At dito ay para mong niluloka, meron kang intent to deceive the electorate o yung mga botante. Ang epekto nito, your Certificate of Candidacy is declared void ab initio, meaning it is invalid from the very day you filed it. Legally speaking, it is as if you never filed to run at all. You never existed as a candidate. Hence, the rule is clear. If there is no valid candidate to begin with, there's no one to substitute. Substitution, therefore, is not allowed by law. Now, apply this rule that I have just discussed to the case of Richard Gomez. So, even if the COMELEC, use the word disqualified in their order, the nature of the case of Richard Gomez falls squarely under Section 78. Bakit? No? First, he was removed because he misrepresented his residency. It is a core qualification required by the Constitution. And second, the original petition explicitly asks not just for disqualification but for the cancellation of the Certificate of Candidacy. Third, the COMELEC granted that petition without any qualification and under the settled jurisprudence, like in the case of Miranda versus Abaya. This means that cancellation of the COC is automatically included even if the word cancel is not explicitly written in the decision. So legally, Richard Gomez was never a candidate at all, and there was no valid candidacy to begin with. Therefore, there was no one, Lucy Torres Gomez, to substitute. The Supreme Court further ruled that while HRET is the sole judge of the election contest for members of the Congress, this power is not absolute. It cannot blatantly violate the law and establish precedents by allowing an invalid substitution. The HRET committed a grave abuse of discretion in this case. This case gave us a clear, permanent rule in the Philippine election law. Not all disqualifications are created equal. If you are disqualified because you lied about your qualifications, your candidacy is not existent. No one can take your place, no matter the intention or the number of votes you get. Public office requires honesty and full compliance with the law, and the law will not recognize any candidacy that is built on falsehood. That would be all. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.